Are you feeling lucky, punk?
That's not even the right line.
Wait, what?
You have to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
Okay, so not only is it the most whiffed line in the history of movie quotes, who can blame a guy, right? Though the movie and the quote are rather popular, there's an underlying theme here that we just can't skip over. See, Dirty Harry was a man of class, and because of this, he carried a revolver, but not just any revolver. We're talking a .44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, or so he thought. Regardless though, it's not the caliber of the revolver that's important here, but instead it's the model. It's like it's not the size, it's the motion, but hey, we're not going there. My name is Dustin with We the People Holsters, and in today's video, we're sitting down to go over what can only be described as one of the most influential firearms companies in America, right behind the one and only Colt. That's right, if the title didn't give it away, we're gonna be talking about the history of Smith and Wesson.
Smith and Wesson, keep my weapon. Heavy weapon.
Before the history lesson, if this is your first time seeing one of our videos, then hey, welcome. Thanks for dropping by the channel. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already so that you can keep up with all of the really cool videos that we've got coming down the pipeline here. Also, if you want a dope t-shirt just like this one here, you can check us out, wethepeopleholsters.com. All right, into the video. Like we talked about just a couple seconds ago, when it comes to American-made gun companies, Smith and Wesson, they're sitting at the cool kids table, right? They are the in crowd. I would even go so far as to say that on Wednesdays, they wear pink, and if you get that reference, we can be friends.
On Wednesdays, we wear pink.
I mean, after all, the company's been in business for over 170 years at this point. The year is 1852, and America is at the pinnacle of innovation. The first public bathhouse is opened in New York. Ohio State legislator has ruled that it is illegal for women and children to work more than 10 hours a day. Someone should have told my dad that. And in the good old state of Massachusetts, two guys by the name of Horace Smith and Daniel B. Wesson were chasing the American dream by founding a company to manufacture and market repeating firearms. For context, this would come about 25 years after Sam Colt would patent the first revolver ever, which is a story all of its own that we actually just talked about, and you can check it out on our YouTube channel. It's a great video. The goal here was to create a revolving handgun that could fire a fully self-contained cartridge instead of having to pour powder down and then pack it and then put the ball on top. It was just a disaster. And they did just that. Smith and Wesson would develop their first revolver in just 2 short years. Dubbed the volcanic pistol, this gun would sweep the nation because it was one of the first guns on the market that could be fired as quickly as the shooter could cycle the lever action. And yes, it had a lever action, and they named it the volcanic pistol because, quote, it had the force of an erupting volcano, end quote. That's metal as f***. Fun fact for you guys here, if you wanted to buy a volcanic pistol today, it'll cost you somewhere in the neighborhood of $12,000 freaking dollars. Yikes. Smith & Wesson would continue to revolutionize the revolver market, introducing the Model 1 in 1857, which built off the successes of the volcanic pistol. And by 1870, they had introduced the Model 3, which was the first ever large caliber center fire revolver, and not a Tesla like most kids these days think it is. All of these innovations would mean the end of the percussion cap pistols and would begin the era of the center fire pistol arms race cartridges in America. By the turn of the century, Smith & Wesson would again dominate the market by introducing to the world the very first double-action revolver. For the first time in history, you could simply just pull the trigger back and the gun would cock the hammer and then release it, striking the round and firing the gun. This was obviously a huge change, as previously these steps had to be done separately. That's why you see the cowboys in all the movies do the little single action thing where they pull out of the holster and just ba 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 like that. By the mid-1930s, Smith & Wesson had created a league all of their own. They would do this by introducing their Model 27 revolver, which was not only a new revolver design, but it would also introduce a brand spanking new caliber, the one and only, you may have heard of it, .357 Magnum. This new round was developed to give law enforcement significantly more stopping power in their carry guns. However, little did Smith & Wesson know that it would also usher in an entire era of the Magnum caliber revolution. That's right, not only did S&W change the game again like they had in the past, but they also did it in the middle of one of the hardest decades in American history, the Great Depression. This would carry on for nearly 2 decades until in 1955 when Smith and Wesson would introduce the next revolver and caliber in their lineup, the Model 29. Now, the Model 29 would be offered in 2 barrel lengths, 4 inches and 6.5 inches, and would be chambered in the all-new, all-American, and all-badass 44 Magnum, which is an absolute beast of a round if you've ever seen and or fired one in real life. A few short years later, they would add an even bigger barrel option, this time with an 8 3/8 inch barrel, which likely led to the development of the slang term hand cannon. We're talking massive barrel length here. Regardless, it's important to note that while this new handgun was cool, demand for revolvers would slowly but steadily decrease through the 1960s, and just when Smith and Wesson had thought that things were getting a little bit dark and dreary and maybe not looking so good, then BAM! Dirty Harry, baby. The Model 29's feature in the film would not only create one of the most iconic scenes of all time, but also it would skyrocket demand for the revolver. Americans literally all over the country would flock to their local gun stores wanting to get their very own Model 29 so they too could be just like good old Clint Eastwood. Fun fact for you guys here, if you didn't know, the film was originally going to cast featuring a 4-inch barreled Model 29, but unfortunately the shorter barreled variant was not yet available at the time of filming. A simple swap at the time, but it definitely made Eastwood look way more badass in our opinion in the film. I mean, it's just, that long barrel just does it. Another really interesting bit that we should talk about is how long law enforcement carried revolvers in the United States of America. Despite the Glock handgun quite literally being developed in the 1980s, law enforcement all around the United States continued to carry revolvers until the late 1990s. This was partially to blame for why the Los Angeles shootout turned out the way it did, with law enforcement officers shooting revolvers, right? And the bad guys were running fully kitted out AK setups. It was straight up not a good time, bro. And of course, we could not talk about Smith and Wesson without talking about the one and only monstrosity of a Magnum revolver, the 500 Magnum. Released in 2003, the 500 Smith and Wesson Magnum would be the biggest and most powerful revolver cartridge in the world. Firing a 300 grain bullet, which is just under 3/4 of an ounce, the 500 Magnum packs a punch both downrange and in terms of recoil. It's wicked. But Smith & Wesson doesn't just make revolvers. Despite their rich history in the rotating cylinder firearm game, they also make some of the most popular polymer lower handguns on the market with their line of M&P pistols. Fun fact for you here, M&P actually stands for military and police, as these handguns were actually developed for the line of duty. Additionally, S&W offers a solid discount for law enforcement, and in our humble opinion, should have won, the military contract for handguns over Sig Sauer, because it would make sense to keep your military arms made in the USA. Not that I'm mad about it or anything. Anyways, these M&P pistols have been widely adapted across all sorts of users as they're affordable, reliable, and overall just a super solid buy for the money. End quote. They're just awesome. One thing that is important to note about the history of the old S&W is that unlike some of the other manufacturers in the market, Colt, sorry about that, it seems like they've managed to keep their noses out of trouble. Now, I'm not sure if that's just because someone has done a really good job of burying any sort of incriminating information or evidence against the company, or if it's just because Smith & Wesson has done a really great job of managing their company for, 170 years, right? A century and a half now. But one thing is for certain here, right? They definitely made a lasting impression on the firearms world for decades to come. Have you owned a Smith & Wesson? If so, drop a comment down below and let us know your experience with them. And as always, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you can keep up with all of the future content that we have coming your way. With that, my name is Dustin. I'll see you guys on the next one. Stay free, friends.